Hey YouTube, Ender Angel here again with the first episode of our What If with Greater Power collection series. In this collection, we will cover what if Flash Thompson had become Spider-Man, what if the X-Men were 01000011, whatever that means, what if Peter Parker had become the Punisher, what if Marvel Comics went metal with the Ghost Rider, and what if Thor was raised by frost giants? And finally, what if magic had become Sorcerer Supreme? So, our first episode will cover the issue What If Flash Thompson Became Spider Man? Spoiler alert, I will be covering this story in depth. I'll be going through the pages, narrating them. So, you've been warned, spoilers are ahead. Let's get started. The cover art for this issue shows Flash Thompson, the high school bully of Peter Parker from the classic Spider-Man comics. This is a what-if tale if Flash was bitten by the radioactive spider instead of Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man. Our story starts looking through the lens of photographer Peter Parker. Parker is capturing the citizens of New York, fleeing in a panic. Flash Thompson is remembering about being turned into a soldier by the U.S. military. The crowd is pushing past Peter as he attempts to get closer to the action. Peter is able to continue capturing the scene as he grows closer to the superhero battle in progress. It is Flash Thompson's Spider-Man battling the Masters of Menace, a circus-themed gang of supervillains. Spider-Man punches Cannonball, sending him sailing towards Peter. Peter is barely able to duck to avoid being hit by the stunned villain. Peter snaps a picture of the brutal force used against the villain Cannonball. Spider-Man now turns his attention towards Princess Python. He uses her giant pet like a whip, wrapping its coils around her legs. She slams hard, face first into the pavement, barely missing an innocent young girl and her mother, cowering in fear. Spider-Man next tosses a boulder, knocking the villain known as the Crafty Clown off his unicycle as he attempts to escape. Spider-Man asks him what his hurry is. The Crafty Clown begs Spider-Man, hoping for mercy after seeing the way Spider-Man has beat his team to a bloody pulp. However, Spider-Man shows the clown no mercy. Flash has clearly lost his composure as he compares robbing these people to a game that he says they are the losers of. The clown again begs for mercy. However, another devastating punch is delivered to the helpless clown. The NYPD show up and take over. As they take the villains into custody, Spider-Man complains that he fights them to a standstill, and yet the police get all the glory. Spider-Man is shocked that the mother is comforting her daughter. She is still in shock by the brutality of Spider-Man. Spider-Man is triggered by their sympathy for the villains. He drags the crafty clown over to the pair. He tells them he is a hero and they should be thanking him for stopping them. The mother begs Spider-Man to stop. Peter Parker immortalizes the mother and daughter's fear and distress within a photo. The sound of Peter's camera catches Spider-Man's attention, and not in a good way, as he screams his name. He starts to blame Peter for taking photos that make him look bad. Peter tells him he only records what is happening in front of him, and nothing more. Spider-Man threatens to punch him, and the police are forced to order Spider-Man to stand down. Peter tosses a tracking device on Flash's back as he turns to argue with the police. Flash jumps away, complaining that the cops have turned on him, even after he has stopped this gang of supervillains. Peter tests the tracker as Flash jumps away. Flash, being not as scientifically inclined as Peter Parker, never invented the web shooters in this universe. We see Flash taking a moment to express frustration at not being appreciated for being the hero he thinks he is. After Nick Fury absorbed Uatu, the Watcher's powers, he was transformed into the new Watcher for Earth, known as the Unseen. We see the Unseen explaining that in this multiverse of universes, a single choice can change the outcome of a universe. For this universe that we're observing, he explains that the change was that Flash Thompson became the Spider-Man. Flash also started out using his newfound powers to be a wrestler. However, unlike Peter, Flash didn't hold back when using his powers. Another defining moment that was different was that Flash saw himself as a hero from the very start. So when the wrestling event was robbed, just like it was in Peter's universe, Flash chose to stop the thief with a clothesline maneuver. Since Flash was a kid, he was always filled with confidence, so he took to his role as a hero much faster than Peter Parker, who had been filled with self-doubt. However, this didn't mean he always made the best choices. Flash chose to drop out of high school to become Spider-Man full-time. We now see J. Jonah Jameson writing an article about Spider-Man. In this universe, it seems Jameson is a fan of Spider-Man's. It seems that Jameson has been affected by the death of his son, an astronaut, blaming the government and NASA for his death. Peter interrupts him, telling him that he has new photos of Spider-Man and that they are a bit violent. Jameson snatches them out of his hand, excusing the violence as an effective deterrent. He states that if NASA had been as effective, that his son might still be alive. Peter attempts to rebut. However, Jameson interrupts him, saying that if Spider-Man had been at his son's shuttle accident, things could have been different. Peter redirects his attention towards the photos. Jameson decides to buy all the photos off of Peter, again talking about effective action making a hero. We are returned to the Unseen. He explains the change in J. Jonah Jameson. Peter Parker as Spider-Man was able to save his son, so Jameson focuses on hating Spider-Man for being a masked vigilante. However, in this world, J. Jonah Jameson focused on his anger towards the death of his son, John Jameson, and hating NASA and the government that failed to keep him safe, which eventually turned into hero worship of Spider-Man. We are now taken to the hospital room of Aunt May. Peter and Uncle Ben are being told that she has blood cancer. The bad news is the rare isotope called ISO-36 that is needed to treat her cancer has been stolen. Peter is upset. He has worked really hard to capture pictures of Spider-Man so that he could pay for this treatment, only to be stopped by the theft. Uncle Ben tells Peter that Aunt May is proud of a responsible young man he has become. Peter replies that that does him little good if he cannot save the ones that he loves. Ben tells him life doesn't always give us answers, that we must seek them for ourselves. Peter turns on the tracking device so he can locate Spider-Man. He was using it only to take photos of him to sell. Now he plans to use it to save Aunt May. Next, we are taken to the trailer park that Flash is living at. His neighbor asks him if the rent will be on time this month. Flash looks annoyed as he turns and looks at her. Flash says he'll get his money. The neighbor interjects again by telling him he needs to find himself a job. Flash turns back, insulted by the woman's comment. She goes on to say that he needs to work for a living. She tells him she sees him going out every night, and she assumes it's to party with his friends, unaware that he's living a double life as Spider-Man. She tells him that kids his age think they are better than everyone else. Flash loses his temper, screaming that he is better than her. The woman topples over as he tells her that he was respected for his accomplishments in the high school football team. Then he alludes to the fact that he still would be respected if anyone knew the fact that he was Spider-Man. The woman yells back at Flash, telling him to grow up, that his accomplishments in high school mean little in the real world. Flash is surprised to find Peter in his trailer holding his suit. Peter seems equally surprised to find out that Flash is Spider-Man. Flash grabs the costume out of his hands and asks why he is there. Peter explains that he placed a tracker so he could track Spider-Man for photos that he could sell. Flash calls Peter a little creep for spying on him. Peter tries to explain about the stolen isotope that Aunt May needs to survive. Flash really starts losing his temper towards Peter, claiming he hated and was always jealous of him. Peter tells Flash that he is wrong. He begs Flash to listen, telling him that his aunt will die unless he helps. Flash yells at Peter, blaming him for turning people against him with his photos, not wanting to listen to Peter's plea for help. Flash doesn't hold back as he punches Peter with all of his might, saying that he has ruined his life. Peter hits the back of the trailer so hard it crumbles the frame and outer shell. Flash is in shock, as Peter does not move when he calls out his name. Flash hurries over to check on him, hoping he is only injured. He never thought of himself as a killer, yet Peter is lying before him, murdered by his own hand. Flash begins to repeat to himself that he is a good guy. In the background, the TV plays the news report of the stolen isotope and of the mastermind behind the crime, the master planner. The unseen tells us that Flash has to face the truth of who he thinks he is as opposed to who he really is. Now Flash seeks redemption for the death of Peter to save Aunt May. We see him busting into a warehouse where the master planner's men are hiding out. Spider-Man tears the place apart until, out of fear, one of the goons gives up the location of the master planner at the waterfront. Flash makes his way to the waterfront. He encounters some light resistance, but it isn't anything he can't handle. He jumps through a door that they were guarding as he calls for the master planner to show himself. We learn that the master planner is none other than Dr. Octopus. He has Spider-Man tangled up in his mechanical arms. However, Flash is able to use his spider-like agility to flip free, throwing Octopus off balance. Doc Ock uses one of his arms wrapped around a pillar to brace himself as the other three arms go after Spider-Man. However, Flash is able to use the arms to his advantage and destroy the center pillar. Doc Ock calls him a fool as it was a load-bearing column for the floor above them. Octavius retreats to avoid falling debris. Spider-Man is caught in the middle of it. The unseen tells us that some events are so critical that they repeat themselves endlessly through the multiverse, and this is one such moment. Flash comes to terms with who he is. He was captain of the football team. He wanted to be respected, to be looked up to. But what am I really, he thinks to himself. He comes to the realization that he is a bully, and even worse, a killer. Flash reflects on Peter's death, and Aunt May, and how she needs the isotope. He says that he is no hero, but for once in his life, he wasn't going to be selfish about what he wants, and who loves him, and who hates him. He tells himself that he isn't good enough to be Spider-Man, and he is no hero, but it is a life-changing moment for him. He plans to make amends for his mistake, so that one day he could be a good guy. The unseen tells us that the multiverse is but different choices that are being made. And in a universe where Flash becomes Spider-Man, history is changed forever. For Uncle Ben lived when he should have died, and Peter should have lived, yet died. The multiverse is spun by the choices we make. This universe was defined by the choices that Flash Thompson made. Our story ends with Flash taking responsibility for his actions as he is hauled away in handcuffs for Peter's murder. So, that is the end of our episode of What If Flash Thompson Became Spider-Man. In the next issue of the collection, we will cover What If the X-Men were 010010. I guess we'll find out what that means together next time. Here's a preview of the issue. Please like and subscribe to see future episodes. Thanks, guys.